ready as I'm going to get.
Tell us about yourself and what motivated you to rerun for the Arizona State Legislature.
Boy, why I'm rerunning is the hardest part of that. I every time I come down here, I complain. In fact, I was just complaining to my colleagues today about how much I hate it down here. And I guess I'm rerunning because I like to think I'm doing something to make the world better. And I'm sure different people would agree or not agree, but there's things you can do when you're in the legislature you can't do otherwise. So I guess I'm running again because I want to be able to do those things, and I hope I'm doing good things, and I'm hoping I'm helping to make Arizona better. And I could probably make a longer answer, but that's probably the most truthful answer.
Okay. What professional or personal experiences best prepare you to represent the business community in Gilbert and the East Valley?
Um, in the legislature, in fact, I just had a conversation about this today with a couple of my colleagues, literally half an hour ago, and we were talking about what makes people better legislators or more challenging legislators. And when you come down here, a lot of people think about some of the hot button issues. They think about, I don't know, do you want guns in restaurants or something like that? Or do you want I don't know, the right to abortion or some of these things that you read about, everybody gets all fired up about. What people don't generally talk about is the budget that we decide on down here. And our discretionary part of the budget's probably 17 billion, let's say, ballpark. And the total budget's probably closer to 50 billion if you add in all the federal stuff that we don't have a lot of discretion how we spend. But you're managing roughly a 40 to 50 billion dollar budget, and about 17 billion that is largely discretionary. One thing that is really helpful down here is if we get people that have managed money, understand budgets, understand cash flow, because everything that we do down here has to get funded. No matter what you pass, no matter what law you do, nothing's free. If we create a committee, if we create an insurance mandate where we're going to make some insurance company cover something, if we require some sort of healthcare incentive of some sort, everything comes back to the budget. And the most beneficial thing down here is have somebody who has managed money, who's managed a business, who's managed something. When you get people that haven't managed anything, some of them haven't paid a utility bill. It's a challenge. I've been a businessman my entire life. I haven't had a job since college other than working for myself. I've done nothing but manage budgets, manage people, manage policy to make things work. So I would say the same would apply to me that I would like to see in other legislators. I wish we had a requirement that you had a minimum age of, I don't know, about 40. You have to have at least graduated high school and written a couple of car payments before you can serve down here. But that probably wouldn't fly. But I would think the biggest asset is I have experience in business. That's all I've ever done.
Okay. Arizona has built a reputation as a pro-business state. What policies do you believe are most important to maintain Arizona's economic competitiveness and ensure that businesses continue to invest and create jobs in Gilbert and throughout the state?
I think consistency is something that business relies upon. One of the big issues right now is whether we're going to have tax conformity in Arizona to match the HB1 on the federal government, where they redid our income tax laws. Uh, the biggest question I get right now is whether they support the tax reductions or don't support them. They want to know, what are they? How can we function? How do I file my tax return? And as of right now, there hasn't really been a vote to decide firmly on conformity or not. But for businesses to function, they got to know what are the parameters, what are the laws, what are the guidelines. And right now, even individual people are wondering, am I going to have to amend my taxes after the legislature does its job and decides whether we're going to conform with federal tax laws or not? So I think the number one thing is to have disclosure, have consistency, be able to understand what's expected in the future. What am I going to have to deal with? Even as far as, are we going to fund education? Are we going to have an educated workforce? But whether you are or not, business needs to know what are you going to have so they can make decisions based on the environment that they're going to have to exist in. I could probably talk all day on some of these, but I'm trying to keep it shorter.
Well, that might segue into the next question. What role should the legislature play in strengthening workforce pipelines through K-12 education, community colleges, universities, and career training programs?
One of the biggest things we can do, whether it's the legislature or government in general, is we need an educated, trained workforce, whether that's educated in vocational trades, whether it's education in a college degree or a post-baccalaureate degree. But we need a workforce that can fulfill the demands of the community, whatever we need. Keep the community colleges strong, which we have. In Maricopa, we have one of the best community college districts in the world, also one of the largest. In fact, I think it is the largest. And the same thing with the colleges. We need an educated workforce. We need the availability of classes necessary for a broad variety, whether it's people coming out of high school or people returning to upgrade their skills. What I'm seeing right now is there's a huge demand for the trades and basically people that have vocational training to ready to go to work. And we need to keep them funded and keep them able to thrive.
Switching to infrastructure, what role should the state play in supporting transportation and water infrastructure and other key systems necessary for continued business growth?
For transportation infrastructure, obviously people got to get where they're going. If they can't get to and from work, if they can't get around the things they need to do, you're not going to have any commerce. What was the second part of the question? Infrastructure and water?
Infrastructure and water infrastructure, transportation and water infrastructure.
Water obviously is a big one right now because the Colorado River Compact is up and the state is heavily involved in renegotiation of that. I think everybody's heard something about it, whether the sky's falling, we all need to be in a panic, or whether it's all in good shape. I guess we're all going back and forth on the answer to that. But you've got to have water if you're going to have business or you're going to have residential or anything. You've got to have availability of water. You've got to know what there is, what kind of scarcity there is, what kind of conservation is necessary. And the state has always played a big role in that and will continue forever. Same thing with transportation. I mean, the state controls most of our transportation infrastructure.
Well, building on that, is there a specific transportation or infrastructure project that you feel is most important for our community?
If I was going to pick one, I would probably say access between Queen Creek and Gilbert, between the rest of the East Valley. Trying to get in from the far East Valley, you've got about one road out there. You got Ellsworth, or you could take a couple of alternates, but for the most part, I don't have to drive that, fortunately, but I have driven it before. And I can't imagine commuting from out there further into the valley or into Phoenix on a daily basis in either direction. The few times I've had to drive that, it's been just unbelievable. The 24 obviously is a big help. We put that in about 10 years ago. I remember that one because we jokingly named it after a legislator about 10 years ago because he worked so hard to get the 24 in. And at the time, I didn't understand the joke. I didn't really know where the 24 went, but I understand it now, and I'm sure glad that he lobbied so hard to get it. Remember, he traded his budget vote for it. He wouldn't vote for the budget until he got his 24 included in the budget, which is how 24 basically came to exist. I don't know if there's something analogous to that, but something to improve that area coming in from Queen Creek to the Gilbert area would be something if I could pick all by myself. That's something I'd really push for.
Thank you. Next topic is about housing. When it comes to housing availability and workforce housing, what policies, if any, should the state consider instating to improve housing supply, all while maintaining appropriate roles for both local communities in their planning and zoning decisions?
And that's a hot button question there. We've had a lot of bills this year talking about reducing the requirements for zoning or how much a municipality can control in architecture or setbacks or a whole variety of things. And you've got the flip side of that is neighborhoods are set up and many people want more space between the houses. I mean, they want less selection because they want conformity on property values. it's an ongoing battle as to what the balance is between what HOAs or municipalities should be allowed to do and what a homeowner should be able to do with their own property. It frequently comes down to a property rights issue. If you own the property, should you be able to do whatever you want with it? And of course, most of us are going to agree, yeah, if you own it, you should be able to do whatever you want to do with it. But then you got to factor in, unless you're damaging your neighbor's property or the value of your neighbor's property, because they may have bought their property with the understanding it's going to stay the way it is, or there's going to be limitations of what can be done next door, anything from their views to the color of your house. So there's been a big push to try to reduce the amount of regulation that can be placed so we can free the builders up to build more houses with less things tying their hands. Nobody wants high density housing. I've never had anybody call me and say, could you please build some apartments or some condos next to my acre lot? I'd really like to have some apartments over there because we need more places for just average workers to live that they can afford. On the other hand, I've had many calls, particularly when I was on the council, of, oh no, we don't want any apartments. Let's put all those in Tucson. People can just drive to Phoenix to come to work. Now, I mean that obviously tongue in cheek. They're not really going to drive that distance, but it's a very difficult balance because everybody agrees we need housing, we need workers. In Gilbert, it's very frequent somebody will say, I want to have my kids live near me. I want them to live in Gilbert, but they can't afford to live in Gilbert because we don't have any. Low income is kind of a broad term, but let's say condos, townhouses, zero lot line houses, something that starter homes where our kids could live if they wanted to. And we've done a good job of very much limiting that kind of stuff. Exactly what regulation or deregulation, if I knew the answer, I would have already done it. But there's been a lot of stuff we've been discussing. I'm in favor of maybe reducing some of the restrictions so we can incentivize or allow more higher density housing to be built. But I also don't want people who built higher value homes with the understanding that the zoning was already in place or the general plan was in place and harm them either. It's not something from the state level that's easy to handle because the needs of Gilbert are different from, say, the needs of Sedona or Flagstaff or Tucson. So I don't know the state is going to be the complete answer, but we may be able to influence some of the municipalities in their decisions.
Thank you.
Well, as we're wrapping up here, the last three questions, we got about, 7 minutes. How do you view the balance between state authority and local decision making when it comes to economic development, housing, and business regulations? And can you share a specific issue you hope to champion when it comes to the balance between both?
Well, I tend to think government should be closest to the people. And I think the closer you are to the people, the better decisions you make. I'm a supporter of HOAs. If you choose to live in an HOA, I think the HOA should have the authority to enforce its CC&Rs. At the same time, I think if you choose not to live in an HOA, you should have that option as well. So if you go the next level up, I'm supportive of the municipalities trying to control their zoning and their guidelines in their community, but I don't think that should go so far as to allow municipalities to require every home to be built in an HOA. I think if people don't want to be in an HOA, they should have that option, and I think the market will dictate that for them. If everybody wants in an HOA, that's what the market will dictate, and that's where it will go. If no one wants in an HOA, I think the market will dictate that, and it will go that direction. So I don't want to be too heavy-handed on the cities or the HOAs, but I think there needs to be some guidance to both. I know we had a bill, I think it was last year, where we overruled basically parking in HOAs because some HOAs didn't want any on-street parking. They didn't want any driveway parking. We had many people came in and said, I can't, I've got a son that's driving. I've got a car. My wife's got a car. What am I supposed to do with my son's car? Does he park over in the grocery store next door? So I don't remember all the details of the law, but for the most part, we overruled the HOAs and said you can park on a public street. If it's a private street and the HOA owns it, they can do what they want, but you cannot prevent somebody from parking on a public street. I think that was a positive. We've discussed several times this year on municipalities of preventing them from dictating some of the details on square footage, cosmetic designs, architectures, things like that. None of that has passed, but it's been discussed. I don't think the state should dictate without the cooperation and input from the municipalities, which in some cases we can get broad agreement or consensus. If we have the consensus, I support it. Would I champion any of those? I would champion something that we can get consensus from a large group. I don't think telling the municipalities or the HOAs this is the only way we can go is the path that I would take. However, I am supportive and I have participated in putting together stakeholders from different groups and trying to get some kind of consensus. And consensus may not be 100%, but if you can get a majority, that's the path I would follow.
What role should the legislator play in supporting responsible water management while ensuring that communities like Gilbert can continue to attract businesses and residents?
I think the state's involvement in water management at the municipal level should be minimal. And in most cases it is. Like Gilbert has several sources of water that it manages, and some of it's purchased. The state is more involved in things like the Colorado River or CAP, where in general we're not heavily involved in any of the municipalities. In Gilbert's case, as you probably know, we were working on, I think we had 9 wells we were trying to get done, and they weren't moving very fast. So the state did contribute quite a bit of money to getting those wells speeded up, and I think they're all in the ground. I don't know that they're all completed and pumping water, but I think they are all in the ground. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think the state contributed around 20 million the first year and 5 million in 2 consecutive years. I doubt there'll be a contribution this year because there just isn't money in the budget for some of these special interest places. And Gilbert would be considered a special interest in the budget when we're sending state money to Gilbert. So I doubt we'll see it this year. But for the most part, I don't see the state as having a role in the decisions of municipalities on how they control their own water supply and usage.
Our last question. What is one policy issue affecting Arizona business community that you believe the legislator should prioritize over the next 2 years?
I don't like our tax code, and I've argued to modify it. We've moved the personal income tax to a flat tax. I think some of the corporate tax I'm not in agreement with. I think we need to make some modifications. I'd like to see it lowered. I'm very much against the personal property tax, which we've made some changes to, which seems like business has been fighting for as long as I can remember. We're still dealing with a certain level of the personal property tax, which I think should be abolished entirely. I don't think should be paying taxes on non-functional assets, and we have limited it, but we're still paying tax on some equipment and things that we're not even using. I would support a faster depreciation schedule on quite a bit of it. I don't know that I'd be successful in that. I've brought that up, I think, 3 years in a row now. I don't think I've really gotten any of it past the discussion stage, but I'm heavily opposed to the current tax structure that we use in the business community. And I could go over a bunch of other aspects, but those are probably the highlights, those two. That personal property tax should have been abolished many years ago. Property tax, I wouldn't mind seeing change. Just general real property taxes, I wouldn't mind seeing modified either. The heaviest burden is going to, whether it's small business, big business, it's investment property is paying the majority of the tax. And I'm not supportive of that either. Of course, I've been a businessman my whole life. I'm probably biased.